going to be here. And so Dr. Dobbs, we're going to just go ahead and give you the floor and let you tell us what you need from us.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to everybody here. I think I've got my thing on. So we'll just keep it kind of brief. Want to go over some sort of big ticket items, just to kind of go over the different elements of the budget request. The first element we have is $1.6 million in general fund support for the Violence Against Women's program, or Office Against Interpersonal Violence. There was a major federal budget cut, and we identified this much as the piece that would go toward human trafficking that would not be covered. But there are actually two other bills that are circulating on the House side that would actually cover this gap. So if those are funded, this would not be necessary.
Okay.
I think it's 717 and maybe 718. Logan, is that correct? I got him on the spot. But anyway, just for background. As far as we would be seeking some additional funding support based on the new State Personnel Board recommendations for salary reclassifications. So to bring folks up to the minimum value, we would need about $1.2 million in general funds, and to bring them up to the market. Now, market's not like a real market value. That's actually kind of like sort of like a minimum level for market compared to other government employees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like what you'd get in the private sector, another 2.3 million. We would need more spending authority, but that's not money.
Mm-hmm.
That's just authority to spend money we have like on our federal grants and stuff like that. And so you can see we would have a total 2023 requested general fund budget of $38,495,000. Again, if that Violence Against Women is funded through the other mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
this would not be required.
Okay.
We also want to increasing our spending, our special fund authority or our spending authority by 19.8 million to cover a whole bunch of other elements. Now, in trauma, we want to keep the trauma spending authority. We don't have that much money. We only, I think, had like a 20 million last year. Is that correct? We had about 28 million last year. 20 million. So this is just a spending authority, but we got about $20 million to spend in that program. The sort of the new thing that's sort of on the horizon that I know you're aware of for the marijuana program, it looks like that we're going to be running. We would need funding to make that happen. And so these are estimates that are based on the research we did before when we were working up 65 off of the constitutional process. And for fiscal year 2020, between now and July, we need about $3.1 million. A lot of that expenditure is going to be like lab equipment, software that are one-time expenditures. But then as we go into FY 2023, we estimate we need about 5.9 million to run that program. Now, this does include the components in the program that would be the agriculture that was, I think, recently shifted over to us.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the total amount. And I think other than that, we do have some information on bonds. We would need, we've been meeting with the different chairmen of the different committees for bond requests to fund our rural water loan program, about $4.5 million. This is a federal program that has basically a 5-to-1 match. It's actually more generous this year. So we would get actually about $32 million to give to rural water systems to help them, update and build their infrastructure. If we can fully match it at 4.45 million, that will generate about $15 million in loan forgiveness. So basically, in addition to the loans, it'll give us loan forgiveness. So if we did like 4 million, but not the full amount, we wouldn't qualify. So it's important to get that full amount. And then we are, last year you guys, or through the capital expense fund, we got about $6 million to start renovations on one of our buildings. It's a 1950 building that's really not inhabitable in large measure. We had an updated expenditure sort of estimate from Bureau of Buildings, about 225 million to finish it out. The thing that's new with this is, we had asked previously about updating our state public health pharmacy, which is really a necessity. This actually would be now included in this number.
Okay.
We are now researching what percentage of this number, what amount of this number could be covered under ARPA. So part of this could be displaced by ARPA funding as we get those estimates. Not all of it, but some of it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all we have for our budget request.
Well, that was short and sweet and to the point. And, I would like to do everything that the health department needs, especially in light of everything that's been thrown your way. And of course, you know, you'll have to clear all that with the folks that make the big bucks, but I appreciate you and I appreciate the department and I appreciate the cooperation that I get from the health department. I've never had better cooperation than I've gotten from the health department in the last couple of years since all this mess started. So with that being said, we need to draw down on as much of this, you know, these, especially if we can get loan forgiveness for rural water, all that stuff's a no brainer to me. And for the renovations of that building, I just feel like everything that you have brought is legitimate and valid that needs to be addressed. And we will do the best that we can for you to make sure that we try to address these needs.
Thank you.
Does anybody, any committee members have any questions for Dr. Dobbs? Comments? Well, thank you. We won't keep you any longer.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Good to see
Okay,
y'all
thank
again.
you so much. No, there was no money addressed in the bill, only a tax. And honestly, with unlimited licensing, as this thing grows, I mean, that's just a rough estimate because you're going to have a lot of employees to check on all those unlimited sites. And that's one reason why Oklahoma can't keep up, because they've got 9,000 and something licenses. They can't hire enough people to keep up with it. All right. Yes, please. If they're here, we'll let them come on in.
Moving ahead of.
Ah, we'll wait on her. We're not gonna make you do it. Hey, come on in. Yeah, good. Just sit anywhere that you want to sit, that you got a microphone down there so that the YouTube can pick you up as you talk. Okay, they live stream all this stuff. That's fine. Y'all can sit anywhere you want. I apologize for being in this small room, but that's where we landed. Thank you for being here, and thank you for always taking my calls and listening to my concerns. And we're going to go ahead and let you have the floor and tell us what your requests are.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present today. You have two handouts. The first is a PowerPoint, and I'll just quickly go through this. The first slide really just breaks down what the mental health service delivery system is in our state, which I know most of you know. We have the state operated programs, and then we have the regional community mental health centers, and then other nonprofit profit service agencies and organizations that DMH certifies. Currently, we have 128 certified providers in the state. The next slide gets really to the meat of what we're here to talk about, and that's our legislative budget request. So we had requested our FY23 budget request here is for $220,532,232 in general funds. And this was the joint legislative budget recommendation. So that's why you don't see anything for any restoration. The same with our state source special is what the joint legislative budget recommendation is, and other special source for a total of $645 million. That $400 million on other special source, of course, is our spending authority, our permission to spend the funds that we collect for operations. Included in this is $1 million that would go towards the ongoing expansion of community-based services. This is specifically in the area of data enhancement and a focus for an Office of Utilization review. And that's going to be looking at and tracking and analyzing services that are provided for adult mental health in particular. It also included the $4.9 million request for the state hospital forensic unit, which is in the final planning stages to renovate Building 63. It did not include an increase for the IDD home and community-based waiver. And you'll see the next slide actually gives you a Medicaid impact on the waiver. The reason that we did not is with the enhanced FMAP, we are already going to have the ability to enroll probably 300 to 400 more individuals from the planning list onto the waiver over the next 1 to 2 years. So we didn't include an
That's a
increase
lot.
this year. Yes,
That's,
ma'am.
that's more than we've been doing.
Yes, ma'am, it is. It absolutely is. So that next slide really just gives you kind of the Medicaid impact so you can see. For example, in 2021, the total billed in dollars for the waiver were around $132.9 million. And then the state share at that time that was billed to DMH was 21.5. Just to give you an idea about where we are currently with the waiver, there's 2,688 people who are on the statewide planning list. About 36 to 37% of those are receiving other services. And we actually just recently reviewed our entire list and reached out to families to see how many had services that they were receiving or how many, if they were offered today, did not need the services. So we took around 200 to 300 off of that planning list to kind of a future planning list because it's going to be several years before they would need those. So let's see. Then next, you have a slide about institutional care spending versus community services spending. As you know, we focused on enhancing community-based services the last several years. So you can see a comparison here of FY12 to FY21, and there's been a decrease in institutional care by almost 110 million and an increase in community-based services at right at about 83 million. The fiscal year that we're currently in, FY22, we shifted 5.8 million from our state hospitals to community services to do some enhancements with the crisis stabilization unit. So we are continuing that internal shift as well. The next slide that you have is our budget request expenditures for FY23. So you have a breakdown of what the request is by category. And then you have the FY23 budget to be funded. And you can see the general fund portion, the $220 million, and how that is broken down into the behavioral health programs, the IDD programs, and service budget, which is community services. So if you actually do a comparison from FY22 to 23, you would see an increase in the service budget for community services and a decrease with the behavioral health programs. So again, that shift from institutional to community. The next slide is about our number of field pins, and that's something I wanted to make sure to bring up today. This is actually trending all the way to FY09, where you can see we were right at 9,000 employees. In FY21, you can see on the chart it's 5,167. At the end of December, we had 5,060 employees. We're continuing to see that decrease. Currently, we are experiencing a shortage at our programs, and in several programs, it's at a critical stage. The State Personnel Board has been very helpful working with us to do some temporary salary increases with the funding that we currently have for nurses, because it's very difficult to compete in the private sector with the salaries. And we also did a recruitment flexibility for direct care workers for 20% last year in 2021 to bring those salaries up some as well. However, we are struggling at our programs with workforce, which I know that's
Well,
with everyone.
you know, I've had a lot of experience with that because
Yes,
of some
ma'am.
friends and family members. So I know what a chore it is to try to keep those programs running with good employees.
It is, and it's a difficult job. I'll just give you one example. A program director called me last week to let me know she lost 3 employees to Taco Bell, and it's when Wendy's and
That's not
Taco
what we want to hear.
No, that's very disheartening when you
Yeah.
lose employees.
Yeah.
So, but when you've got some competition, even with fast food restaurants with $14 and $15
Yeah.
an hour and sign-on bonuses, it's
Mhm.
just difficult to compete, especially when you look at the work that we're asking our employees to do with
Yeah.
vulnerable adults. Then the next slide, you have another as a separate handout as well, just so you can see it a little better. As you know, there's been the Department of Justice litigation in the state. And like I said, we've spent much of our planning and resources on how to expand those adult mental health services. This gives you a snapshot of where the state was in 2011 and where the state was in 2021 at the end of the year. So you can see we did not have supported employment or a supported housing program, certified peer support specialists, crisis intervention teams. And then you can see to the other column how much has changed over the last 10 years in this area. You'll also see that there were 3,682 acute psych admissions compared to 1,784. You can see the percentage of that decrease as well. Same with state hospital acute psych beds. And then you can see the increase there with the crisis stabilization beds, which are in local communities and accept on a voluntary basis as well. So you can see the movement of where we want to go. You can also see at the bottom, you have PACT and I-Court and mobile crisis response teams. Something that we've been very proud of with our partnerships with the community mental health centers is as of 2021, all counties, all 82 counties have at least one of these intensive services. They either have PACT, I-Court, or intensive community support. And that is for individuals who have had multiple admissions or at risk for institutionalization. So that's a great accomplishment for the states to have those available in all counties. And then the next several slides are just some highlights, and I won't go through all of those. I just wanted to provide them for you. For one reason is, you know, our agency has mental health, substance use, and IDD services.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot that's occurred in FY21, despite the challenges that the pandemic has brought. Our employees have been incredible, and our community providers have as well. So, and we couldn't do it without, of course, the appropriations, and we appreciate the support.
I appreciate the presentation, and the work that y'all do is extremely difficult. And I know how hard it is to keep employees because I've seen the turnover, you know, when I've had friends and family in some of the service areas. But I'm still hearing a good bit of complaints from the counties about, you know, from the involuntary commitments and finding a place to put the, you know, the temporary place. You know, and some are still using the jails, and then some have tried to make agreements with some private facilities. And I'm still hearing that the community-based health centers are not fulfilling the need, especially in the coast, and that there's just not enough CSU beds. So that's just something that keeps coming back and back and back. And I think that we need to try to look at more resources there to try to address that, because the counties are still drowning and struggling with, you know, what to do with the commitments in that interim time frame. So, you know, whatever y'all can come up with, that's just what I'm hearing the most about, is that's where there's such a gap. And so whatever we can do, you know, while we have this extra money to try to look at something like that would be greatly appreciated by at least my area in the southern part of the state.
Jake and I actually went to Harrison County on Monday. So I know exactly what you're talking about. In that area, we're looking at a diversion center, and we've secured part of the funding, and then the ARPA proposal from the Senate bill includes the remaining funding that we would need to provide them in a grant form to do a diversion center. And it would be the first one in the state like this, where you would have 8 beds that would be considered kind of a living room model. So it's an under 23-hour stay where law enforcement could drop someone off and they could have an assessment and get connected with services. And then there would be 8 crisis stabilization beds as well there. Also in our ARPA proposal, which if the funding was included in the Senate bill, is for 60 more crisis stabilization beds across the state.
Okay.
Because they are needed.
And those diversion centers, I know that my county, Pearl River, has talked to y'all. I know my chancery has talked to y'all in the past about that. And that's something that I don't know how to get off the ground, but apparently it's beginning to work in Harrison County. So we need y'all to kind of help maybe steer these other counties as to how that they could do that if the grant money's there, so that they could, take advantage of this too. If they can get some partners that would, be willing to cooperate with them and try to, solve some of these problems. But I'm very happy to see that it's on the move and that y'all are about to at least give some relief there in Harrison County. But we've got the same issue in Pearl
I
River
know.
and many other counties.
I
But
know.
it's a start. So
It is. It's a pilot. It'll be a start. And then, like I said, we have the 60 beds, and that's included in that, 8 of those. But those 60 beds could really help, and they're kind of scattered throughout the state. The crisis stabilization beds really are key. The community mental health centers are struggling right now, though, with their staffing for those units as well. But they are key. They have a shorter length of stay, a very high diversion rate from the state hospital. And it's something that I'm hoping that the bill goes all the way through and we get the ARPA funding and we can move forward with it.
Well, I've seen it work. I've seen it work when Pine Belt failed. I've seen CSU work. So I know it can help people. So anybody have any questions, or you have anything else, Wendy?
No, ma'am. Just any questions?
Any questions or comments from the rest of my subcommittee? Well, thank y'all so much for your time and for your presentation, and we will do what we can, to help you. And I'm happy that money is is earmarked in that bill for this, because we've needed it for a long time. We seem like we come back here every year with the same issues. And so hopefully we're finally beginning to solve some of them.
I think we are.
So, and hopefully this lawsuit will get taken care of and we'll have better days ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank y'all.
As well. Thank you.
Appreciate it.